So the second half of Galatians 5. What is the DNA of the message on Sunday? What kind of decisions were taken that brought the message? And just to say again here that I'm working with the dust of the passage. I hold that the Spirit works through the dust to bring life, but it is the dust, the DNA, that I can set out here. So how was the word structured last week? There were two key decisions, and then an image that I've been holding on to this one for a while. The first decision lay with being honest about how much the force of Paul's arguments that after the cross there is a new way of living, how much that hit me. And he writes, has a lovely summary phrase of this new way to live in Galatians: Christ-shaped and Spirit-led. And I find that profoundly helpful. What I love about that is both the secureness of what Christ-shaped means, and then the fluidity and freedom of what Spirit-led looks like. I love that godly tension and the dynamic of that. The first decision of the message was to spend time with that freshness, this newness and possibility of life that is given after the cross. The second decision lay with reversing the structure in the letter which placed the description of the acts of the flesh before the description of the fruit of the Spirit. And there are good, strong theological reasons for beginning with the fruit of the Spirit, which are supported by Paul in his earlier words in verse 16. So I say, walk by the Spirit, you'll not gratify the desires of the flesh. And the argument is also supported by the distinction in the comparison of the two ways of living here, that the way of the Spirit is marked by singular fruit, while to walk the way of the flesh is marked by multiple acts. And the commitment here in the decision taken lies with this position that the acts of the flesh are not forming simply a different way of life, but that each act is setting you away from where life is, away from the way of the Spirit, away from this fruitful life that is Christ-shaped and led by the Spirit. What is not of this path, this other way, is a falling away from life. We are not talking about two distinct ways of living which balance each other out and you choose between. I just walked across a bridge there, only one way to do it. So here is a path of life, Christ-shaped and Spirit-led. Acts of the flesh are a turning away, a separate act of coming off the path, off this way of fruitfulness in God. I've always appreciated Thomas Aquinas' understanding of evil, that it's not a thing in itself, but an absence, a nothing, a lack of the good of God's creation. A hole in a sock puts in a strong picture. The hole is there, and yet it's nothing. And these acts of the flesh come in this same way through not walking by the Spirit. The call of the passage theologically is to walk in the Spirit. This is the way to fight against the nothingness of these acts which seek to take us off the path. And it's that positive commitment to delight in God. In the words of the psalmist in Psalm 1, that is the way to live, Christ-shaped and Spirit-led. It is the commitment to this as a way to live that sets aside the acts of the flesh. So these two decisions for the passage, this freshness of the way to live after the cross, and that question of the way to live by the acts of the flesh or by the fruit of the Spirit, it's not a question of equivalent paths that you choose between, but that one of these paths is a path of life, of fruitfulness, while those acts of the flesh are steps away from those moments of life. Those are the decisions which form the message. But there was also an image which I brought in to structure the message, one which I've been holding for a number of years now. There's an ancient walk that goes out into the sea off the Essex coast, Broomway, 6-mile tidal walk that you can only be led along by one who knows the way out to the island. On the other side of this path that you can only be led along, there is quicksand, dangerous water and mud, treacherous paths to slide into if you come off the path that you're being led along. And that seemed to me a powerful picture of what this part of Galatians is saying to us. And by marking out the journey with this path, gave a structure to the message that could hold the two decisions taken earlier. That picture of the tidal path, of being led through the water when I can't see where my feet are going. That is a picture that stays with me when I want to live this Christ-shaped and Spirit-led life. To keep my feet in this path, here is the fruit.